What's good? What's good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of The Urban Platform Speaks. Make sure to like and subscribe as you tune into the channel and check out the content. And with that being said, I want to chime in on this conversation that's going around about Steph Curry being the greatest point guard in NBA history, right? And so I was looking at what's the guy name? Uh Rob Parker. And Rob Parker made some statements about Steph Curry. Not, he didn't think that Steph Curry was the greatest point guard, um, and I have to agree. He also said that Rob Parker also said that Steph Curry, in his opinion, is not even a point guard. And so finally, you know, uh, you know, that's my whole point is how can you compare Steph Curry to Magic Johnson, uh to like Isaiah Thomas, you know, what's the other guy from Utah that played with Carl Malone? Oh my goodness. Like those great point guards, Steve Nash, um, like great point guards like Steph Curry is a combo guard. Steph Curry is a shooter, you know. I just don't think that Steph Curry, like can compare to those guys. And so Steph Curry, now don't get me wrong, Steph Curry, is one of my favorite basketball players, right? And Steph Curry is great at what Steph Curry do. But Steph Curry is definitely not a point guard. And I'm still trying to think of this guy named the guy from Utah that played with Karl Malone. Hmm. I got Steve Nash. I got Magic and Isaiah. All right. Anyway, Steph Curry is not a point guard, and Steph Curry don't compare to none of those guys that I mentioned. Um, he's a combo guard. Now, when it comes to like a combo guard or a shooting guard, I think Steph Curry, in my opinion, is he's the greatest to have ever done that. But he's not a point guard. He's not somebody like also I wouldn't even compare Steph Curry because they don't do the same thing. I wouldn't even compare him to a Chris Paul. He's because Chris Paul is a pure point guard. Guys like that. Oh, here we go, John Stockton. I don't know. I must be getting Alzheimer's or something. But John Stockton, right? Those guys just set people up to score. They run your they run your offense. They are like having a coach. It's like having like a second coach on the floor, on the court, so you can't compare this guy to Magic Johnson. Magic Johnson, in my opinion, is the greatest point guard. And Magic Johnson was not the shooter, nowhere near the shooter that Steph Curry was. But that Steph Curry is. Magic Johnson was never like that shooter. Now Magic can shoot, but he not that. Nobody's like what Steph Curry can do as far as shooting. Um, you when you talking about Magic, you talk about a guy that's like 6'9", and just run a team on a fast break. He with the no look passes and it just was they just did different things. And that's a lot of what goes on today. Like you try to compare players from one era to the next era, but you're comparing people who don't do the same things. You like at different positions. For instance, I had I keep going back to the conversation where people compare Shaq to the Joker. And you can't really compare Shaq to the Joker because I like Shaq can't do what the Joker do, and the Joker can't do what Shaq did. They just played two different positions, and they both guys was dominant, but they just did two different things. And like it would have been different if the Joker had played back in that era with Shaq, or if Shaq had to play in this era with the Joker. Then you can compare those two guys if they played the same position and then they played in the same era. But it's just hard to compare guys like that from two different eras, you know. Um, and so Steph Curry, in my opinion, not a point guard. Um, you know, he don't do what Isaiah did. You know, now Isaiah, how tall? Isaiah probably about 6'1", 6'2". But Isaiah also was a point guard. You know, now Isaiah can shoot. You know, great scorer, great ball handler, and you know, and things of that nature. But he also could set people up to score. Um, you know, and you know, and in my opinion, Isaiah is the second best point guard to have ever played. You know, you got, you know, and I think like John Stockton is right behind him, you know, and stuff like that. But no way that, you know, that Steph Curry. I don't know why people try to compare these guys, you know, or put Steph in a category with all these great point guards, and Steph is not even that. You know, even in this picture, you got Steph Curry. You know, you got Steph Curry shooting because that's mainly what he did. That was his, you know, that's his job. And then you got Magic Johnson, you know, setting up the offense. And that's what point guards do. They set up the offense and they set up their teammates to score so they can be effective. You know, that's like floor managers and floor generals. Steph Curry definitely not that, you know. Steph Curry can't do what like John Stockton did for Utah. It's just not, you know, it's just not. Can you see Steph Curry? Like if you put Steph Curry in that pick and roll with like that pick and roll or that two-man game that John Stockton and Karl Malone used to run. I don't know. I just, you know, like back in that era, it was so physical, and you know, I think John Stockton too is more physical than like what Steph Curry was, even at that point guard position. He's definitely all of those guys, in my opinion, too, protect the ball and turn the ball over a lot less than what Steph Curry. Steph Curry, as a point guard, you don't want your point guard having as many turnovers as like you don't want any of your players having as many turnovers as like what Steph Curry did, you know. But Steph Curry, you know, because of this era, they don't protect the ball as much as those guys used to back in the day. You know, I just don't think that Steph Curry, you know, he don't do what those guys did. You know, you can't compare him to Isaiah. You can't compare him to John Stockton. Um, Magic definitely, you know, and the last of the real like pass first point guards, I think, is Chris Paul. You know, and so, but now is Chris Paul like all right? So is is Steph Curry better at his job? Now you could ask that question. Is Steph Curry better at his job than Chris Paul is at his job? And that question, I would say yes. Like Steph Curry is a better combo guard than Chris Paul is a point guard, and that's high praise for Steph Curry because Chris Paul is probably he's a great point guard. You know, Chris Paul is a great point guard, but Steph Curry is just, you know, he's on a high level, and that's why people want to compare him to you know, to Magic and Isaiah and John Stockton and those guys, but they just do different things. And you know, like if Steph Curry was to set the offense up, and if he had that type of point guard, you know, pass first mentality, and everybody was just feeding off of him, and from that aspect, then yeah, I can compare Magic and Stockton and Isaiah with Steph. But Steph just, you know, to me it's just apples and oranges. Um, I would feel more comfortable comparing him to like somebody like Allen Iverson. Like Allen Iverson is not a point guard. And I don't know why people don't compare Allen Iverson and Steph Curry, because both of those guys are they play the off guard. They play the two position, the number two position. And I don't know why people don't compare those guys, their game. And I think even though I'm an Allen Iverson fan, I think Steph Curry is better at his job than Allen Iverson is at his, but yeah, I just think that Steph Curry, in my opinion, is not a two guard. I would feel more comfortable comparing him to somebody like Allen Iverson, and then you could say, well, all right, well, Steph Curry is better than Allen Iverson. And Allen Iverson is a beast, but Steph Curry is just elite at what he do too, and so but yeah, that's my take on it. Steph Curry, stop comparing Steph Curry to Magic Johnson, John Stockton, and Isaiah Thomas, because they don't do the same things. And it's not the same position. You know, that's how I feel about it. I'm gonna look up some guards. Like Joe Dumars was probably like a two guard. No. Yeah, Joe Dumars, Allen Iverson. Although Joe Dumars and Isaiah Thomas, they was like interchangeable depending on like how you defended their team. So but yeah, I think yeah, they just do different things. This guy Steph is not a point guard, so no, he's not the greatest point guard to ever play in the NBA because he's not a point guard. And so that's my take on it. Make sure to like and subscribe. Also, with that being said, don't forget to leave a comment, and I will check you all out in the next video.